Reed. We made it here. I got here early this morning and checked out everything, and the power was on in the building. I thought, great, but then I got in here and there was no power in this space, but there was power other places in the building. Now we have power in this space and not anywhere else in the building. So, if God provides all the time what you need, so that worked out. I'm just wishing God would stop providing power to the alarm on the air handler in that room over there, which is what we're all hearing. I think that's what's throwing you guys off, is it's not in tempo with the music, and so that's part of that. But so I'm a guy, I can, the men here should be able to block that out, right? Because we can, when we're watching TV, right, we can just block everything else out. So we should be able to block that out, right? Okay, so
let's focus on that and block you out.
Right, or focus on that and block me out, that's right. So you have an option here this morning, right? So anyway, this is a great passage about where Solomon asked for wisdom. Can everybody hear me all right in the back? Am I projecting all right? I'll just project more. I can shout if I need to. But I wanted to take back, maybe you've heard me talk about my first car. It was a Chevy Vega. Does everybody remember Chevy Vega? 1971 Motor Trend Car of the Year, by the way. The Vega was the Car of the Year by Motor Trend. And boy, did they get that one wrong, huh? They missed that one. So you should believe everything you read in magazines. But I remember I was a teenager at the time, and I wanted to my Vega. I noticed there was smoke coming out of it, and my dad went out and looked at it, and sure enough, well, there was a major oil leak. There was a place in the engine where oil was leaking out pretty good, and so Dad said, well, you can't drive it. Don't drive it. And I said, well, I was dating this girl at the time, and I really wanted to go see my girlfriend, and so I determined, I thought to myself, what does my dad know? I mean, he's not a mechanic, right? He's only the son of a mechanic. What does he know? My grandfather was a mechanic, but my dad wasn't. He's a school teacher. What does he know about cars, right? And so I'm thinking to myself, but I'm at the age, where, whatever your parents tell you, you don't really believe them. It's not like you really respect what they're telling you. It's not like they're credible at that point in my life, So I ignored Dad's advice, and I get in my car. And actually, I went down to the workshop, and I found some gasket sealer. And so I went in under the engine, and I took some of that gasket sealer, and I plugged up the place where the oil was coming out. It's supposed to stick to metal, so I figured, you just plug the hole up, right? So, and I should take off down the road, and I'm driving down the road, and sure enough, I'm looking at my rearview window, and there's this white smoke coming out of the back, and I'm going, that's a lot. And then it gets worse. The people behind me are way back, because they, it's creating a visibility problem. And finally, the thing dies on me, and then I've got to do, find a phone, and before cell phones, and I had to go find a phone and do the call of shame, and to my dad, and he's like, well, I told you not to drive the car. But two things were at work there, weren't they? One is, I wanted to do what I wanted to do. That's one thing. I just wanted to do it. So I didn't act wisely because I was doing what I wanted to do or following what I wanted to do. The other reason I didn't act wisely was because I didn't respect my father. I didn't hold him as credible what he was telling me. And because I was at a phase and a time in my life where I didn't respect what he was telling me, I didn't listen to him. Or not only did I not want to listen to him, but I also found a way to rationalize or justify what he was telling me. And so I, in a sense, disrespected what he was saying. If you look at the passage today, did you notice what Solomon was doing before he received wisdom? This text tells us. What was Solomon doing? One, he was already obeying the statutes of God. He was already obeying God. He was already being faithful and righteous before God. He respected what God was telling him. The other thing that he was doing was he was worshiping God. Both before he gets the gift of wisdom and after he gets the gift of wisdom, it's in the context of worship. And so what he's showing is that he respects God, and he respects the things that God is saying to him. And that's very important to receiving wisdom, isn't it? You have to respect the one that is giving it. You have to think the one that's giving it to us is credible, is someone to be respected. Proverbs 1:7. Proverbs is actually a book that we typically traditionally attribute to Solomon. It says this: fear of the Lord is the foundation of true knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and discipline. See, there is the fear of the Lord, the respect for God, which wasn't going on in my Chevy Vega illustration. What? I despised the wisdom, didn't I? I didn't respect the one giving it. And that's the same with God. And that's what's going on here with Solomon. I think the reason that God gives wisdom to Solomon is Solomon is open to it. Solomon is desiring of it. Solomon is respectful of the one giving it. And so Solomon receives this great gift of wisdom. So what is wisdom? Well, there's a few things that it alludes to in the text that kind of helps us understand what wisdom is. First of all, wisdom is the ability to discern between good and evil, it says. So right and wrong. Now, a lot of times we think this. Well, I hear this phrase quoted from Jesus. We're not to do what? We're not to judge, right? But here it alludes to the fact that we are to judge good from evil. We are to judge right from wrong. We are to judge between these two things. What Jesus warns us about is judgmentalism, and that's different between judging right and wrong and being judgmental. So I can judge between right and wrong. I can make a judgment about what is good and evil without being judgmental. Because when I'm being judgmental is I'm putting a value on someone. I'm judging them and saying they're of lesser value than I am or someone else is because of that judgment. And that's judgmentalism. That's different than judging between right and wrong, good and evil. So wisdom is the ability to say this is good and this is evil. This is right and this is wrong. But that judgment or that ability to do that through wisdom should not lead us to be superior. You see what I'm saying? It shouldn't lead us to think that we're better than others because maybe we've made the right decision or we've done the right thing. What it should lead us to is to seek fairness and justice. And that's what Solomon is asking for. He's saying, help me to know good and evil so that I might do just things, that I might do the right things, that I might focus on the right things without devaluing or being judgmental towards people. The person I think that is a great example of that is actually Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King actually stood for something. He didn't stand against people, did he? But he stood for something. He stood for what he believed was right. And it's interesting because he did it in a way, from my perspective, he did it in a way, he stood for what was right, and he said this is right and this is wrong. He made a judgment about right and wrong, good and evil, did he not? But he did it without being judgmental towards people. And he did it in a way where he even said, one of the things I love about that one of the famous speeches, the dream speeches, he says that he had a dream that one day that the sons and daughters of slave owners would sit down at the same table as sons and daughters of former slaves. He was saying, I want to see people come together. I don't want to see judgmentalism would have separated those two groups and said this group is good and this group is bad. But he didn't say that. He said this idea, this behavior is what is wrong. But I want to see people come together. And I don't want to exclude anyone at the table. And so that's a good example of the difference between judging right and wrong versus being judgmental and being devaluing other people. And that was the whole point that Martin Luther King stood for. The other thing about wisdom is that wisdom is not knowledge. I mean, a lot of kids are going to go back to school this week, and all of us can get straight A's, right? And all of us can get perfect SAT scores. And we can have all that knowledge, but if we don't know what to do with it, it's not really it's not very good, is it? I mean, that's wisdom. Wisdom is the ability to take the knowledge, to take the truth, and put it into practice, and to put it into our lives, and to apply it to our lives. Think about these sayings. These are sayings that people say all the time. They're different sayings, but I want you to notice how they seem to be opposite here. So, take for example this saying that we say, actions speak louder than words. How many people have ever said that, right? Actions speak louder than words. How many people have ever said the pen is mightier than the sword? Right? So, wait a second, which one is it? Do actions speak louder than words, or is the pen mightier than the sword? Which one is it? How about this one? Knowledge is power. Right? Ignorance is bliss. Right? How many people said, I've said ignorance is bliss, right? So which one's true? Is it knowledge, power, or is it ignorance that's better? How about this? Look before you leap. Right? Look before you leap. Be cautious. Then there's the other phrase, he who hesitates is lost. Which one is it? How about clothes make the man? And then there's don't judge a book by its cover. Which one is it? Should we dress up or does it matter, right? Should I wear a suit to church or not wear a suit to church, right? Which one does it matter? Then there's another one. With age comes wisdom. Out of the mouths of the babe and sucklings come all wise sayings. Well, who's got the wisdom? The aged or the babe, the newborn? Or the child, right? So how do we know which one's true? Actually, they're all true, aren't they? They all have a truth in them. It's the application of that truth which makes it wise. It's how I apply it and when I apply it, into what situation I apply it, that makes it whether or not I have wisdom. I can know these things and I can quote these phrases, but knowing when to apply them is wisdom. That's what wisdom is. And the other thing about wisdom is that it helps us actually to discern the motives of the heart. To really look at the motives of our hearts, the motives of other people. The very next story in the Old Testament after this story of King Solomon asking for wisdom is the famous story where Solomon has these two mothers bring one child to him. Do you know this story? And these two women, they're arguing over and they're insisting that this child belonged to one of them and the other child had died. And so Solomon orders for the child to be cut in half. Why is he doing that? He's doing it to help discern the motives of the women. Because when he asks for that order to come, one woman says, no, don't do it, don't kill the child. Here, give the child to the other woman, which revealed a motive that she was deeply concerned for the welfare of the child. Whereas the other woman said, oh yeah, go ahead, do it, because thinking that I'm going to let this child die. So he discerned the motive of each heart. One woman was envious because her child had died. She was envious of the other mother having the child, so she was perfectly fine with the child dying. Whereas the true mother, who had love for her child, would rather her child live with someone else than to face death. So in that, he helped to discern the motives of each person's heart. That's so important, isn't it? Because sometimes our motives are not bad. We may do wrong things or we may not get it right, but it's not because our hearts are wrong. And sometimes we do the wrong thing or we make the wrong decision because our hearts are wrong. And there's a difference, isn't there? I think this is very helpful in parenting. Those of you who've been parents or have ever helped take care of younger people or mentored younger people, you know that there's a time where you have to figure out, okay, are they just acting their age, or are they being rebellious? Are they just being a kid, or are they really just being mean or malicious? And to discern that is important, especially in how you handle the situation. I've got permission by my daughters to share this story, and I've already covered it with them. But I came home one day, about dinner time, came home, and they were in their usual spot. Where's the usual spot for teenagers? When you come home, right? What was it? Computer, TV, this, the thumb thing, the texting, right? And so they're probably doing all three. I can't remember. But I walk into the family room, and I said, come with me. They're like, what do you mean, Dad? I'm like, just come with me. And they're like, what? What are you doing? What did you do? What did I do? All this stuff, and I'm like, just come with me. So we walk out the front door of the house, and we've got a driveway, and then we've got about another lane that's about a tenth of a mile up the lane towards the end to where the road is, and because we're back a ways. And I just keep walking. I'm not saying they're like, what's going on? I don't know. They're trying to figure it out. And I'm just like walking to the end of the lane. I get to the end of the lane, I gather up there at the end of the lane, and I said, show me where you get off the bus. And, Dad, the bus pulls up, they came over, and they said, well, it gets off. I said, no, I want to show me exactly where you get off the bus. Where does the door open up, and where do you step off the bus? So they go out in the road, and they show me where the door opens, and where they step off the bus, and I stand in that place, and I say, so this is where you get off the bus, right? Okay. And then what do you do right after you get off the bus? And they said, well, we walk to the house, Dad, they're like, what are you talking about, And I said, so you walk this direction, right? Okay, yeah. And so I start to walk, I said, all right, now I line them up beside me. I said, now walk with me. And then I stopped, and I said, and what is this right beside me, right here? And they're like, Dad, that's a trash can. Oh, yeah, that's what it is. It's a trash can, right? And so I said, and where does the trash can go? Well, goes in the garage, Dad? And then all of a sudden the light bulb's starting to go off. And then I said, well, wait, there's something else. I said, look, let's look over here to the left. And I said, what is this over here to the left? And they said, well, that's a mailbox, Dad. Yeah, let's walk over. So we walked over together to the mailbox, and I said, look, this lid comes down, and you look, there's mail inside. And reach in there and grab that mail and pull it out. And so I had one with the trash can and one with the mail, and we're walking back to the house, and then they got it. Right? You know, the next day, the next time this happened, guess what? The trash can was in, the mail was in. In fact, I haven't had to take the trash can back to the lane too often since I had this little thing. But it wasn't that they were bad kids, was it? It wasn't that they were being mean or malicious. Their motives were not wrong. But what was happening was, this is what John Wesley called a sin of omission. You know what a sin of omission? It's like, I just don't know that I'm supposed to, or I miss doing it because I'm not thinking about it, you know? It's not intentional, I just don't do what I know that I should do. But now, if they get it wrong, what happens? It becomes a sin of what? Another thing called a sin of commission, because the motives are now different. It's before they didn't know any better, but now they know better. And so if they don't do it, then it becomes more intentional, or so there's a different response to that. Notice I didn't take their cell phones away for them not doing that. What they needed was instruction. They didn't need discipline at that point. And so knowing the motives really determines how we react to a situation, doesn't it? And so so that really weighs in, and that's part of wisdom. Now, I don't always get it right, and I really just had fun doing that. I just, sometimes you got to have fun with your kids. But, that's part of wisdom, though. Part of wisdom is helping to discern motives and looking at motives, not just the facts, not just the knowledge, not just all the statistics of a situation, but to be able to discern the motives in that situation as well and to understand them. And sometimes we have to ask questions to do that. So, we all have situations in our life, I'm assuming today, where we're trying to make decisions, aren't we? And we want to make wise decisions. And we may have big decisions to make this week or this day, I don't know. Or it may just be little stuff going on. But it promises us in James chapter 1, verse 5, God says, and James writes, if any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously. You hear that? Generously. God wants to give us wisdom. God wants to give us it generously. And all we have to do is ask for it. James goes on and says, gives generously to all without finding fault, without judging us. And it will be given to you. So I don't know what's going on in your life right now, but I do know this, that the promise is that if you need wisdom and you ask God, you'll get it. Amen.